Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we're going to get started on the reel that a viewer sent in. This one is the Shimano TR 2000 lever drag. It's the Charter Special, and this one's got an interesting problem to it. It has a reel that turns relatively fine at the low end, but as soon as you bring that up to the high end, it's almost impossible to turn. So we're going to go in and take this apart, service it, and hopefully get it back to the viewer without incurring too much expense. Now, the viewer did ask me to change over the drag while we're at this, so you'll see a complete take apart during this video. You'll see how to replace the drag with a Carbontex drag, and we'll learn what's going on here that's causing this this problem. So my initial guess is that it probably hasn't been greased and lubed in a while, and something is sticking in there, but we won't know until we take it apart. So let's start taking this apart, and to do that we do it by removing the set screw from the nut cap, and then we'll remove the nut cap, and then we'll remove the nut, which is usually a 10mm nut. Still is. This one's kind of stuck. There we go. Now, what I recommend to do with these is to go out onto the website, pull a schematic diagram for that. In this case, here's your TR 2000 lever drag, which is what this is. And this gives you the exploded views in case you have memory lapse, or in case you're looking to identify a missing part perhaps, or a broken part. And then most of the time, corresponding to those numbers is the part number, the description, and that can be used to order parts in the event that there's a broken part in there or a part needs to be replaced. In the case of the Carbontex drags, I went to Smooth Drag, which provides Carbontex drags for many products, and in this case I ordered that straight through there, and they just had a section that said you know, what reel you were trying to get that drag for. So before I go too much further, I'm going to go ahead and put that latex glove on, just in case there's some kind of junk in the reel or that. I like to keep the oils and the like off of that. Okay, we took the handle nut off. We can take the handle off. We can pull the shield, and I think that's all we're going to take off of this at the moment. All right, we're going to remove next the lever drag itself, the adjuster knob that allows for this reel to go into full drag mode. We have a spring underneath, sits on the cradle like that. We'll notice that and put that into the my parts tray there, and then we should be able to pull the little one. And this is pretty typical of all of the lever drags. There's two kind of triangular pieces on top of this washer, and as they slide, they produce more tension in terms of pulling the drag onto the pressure plate. So this is lever drags are a little bit interesting in that they pull, they don't push. We can take this off, but notice it's on the case. It has no effect on the internal side at all. Okay, so I'm going to pull the trim ring next. That is the guide for the lever ring function. We're going to notice that there's a flathead screw in the middle, and the other two have a little collar on them with rounded screws, just so that when we go to replace these or put these back into order, that we know the sequence. And what I recommend, in addition to that schematic, I always recommend that you take pictures along the way. That's kind of what I'm doing with this video at the moment, but you want to take the pictures so that if you get stumped, or you wind up with an extra piece somewhere, or you're out of sequence somehow, go back to your pictures and look. So use your iPhone or your digital phone camera, regardless of brand. Use your stationary digital camera, which is what I'm using. It's just in this case, it's just a Canon Sure Shot. Use your stationary film if you want. You know, use a bigger camera to take set shots or videos, whatever, but take pictures along the way. That way you know at critical junctures where you are in the stage of the reel. So for example, I might take the first screw out and take a picture of the side plate. You certainly don't need to take one after every screw that you pull out. Okay, now we're going to get down to the heart of the business here and take the side plate off. I think we've got them all. Should be able to remove the side plate, which we do. And the first thing to do then is just test this. Make sure that the internal gears are operating properly. In this case, they've got that purple grease on it, which is fine. The ball bearings are running good. The anti-reverse is running good. We don't have to do anything here. I mean, we could dress it up, pull it all apart, show you how to lube it, but this is kind of new grease. As a matter of fact, this reel looks very new. So it's kind of a curiosity here in terms of why the other piece is there. And I just noticed that a shim washer came off the top here. I'm just going to put that back now. If it falls into the tray, I'll remember that later. And then here's the guts of the reel itself then. It's all in this spool. As you notice in the back, there's not much going on. There's a big wheel that drives a small wheel. This is driven by the spool itself. This drives the worm gear to make it go, and all of this is operating smoothly. So in problem diagnosis, we're going to say that that's not the cause either. And what I'm going to do right now is just grab the schematic for a moment. I'm looking for a little blue piece here, which is the brake. Okay, so this thing's been puzzling me, and I actually stopped the video for a moment. I went back and I looked at the start of this to see if that blue piece, the corresponding blue piece, the other brake pad, was on it when I took the reel off, the side plate off. It was not. So my suspicions increased. I believe that somehow this one became detached and is either ground up or somehow hiding in the side plate here, and that's what's causing the poor performance on this reel when you go to full drag and tighten everything down. So I went out and I ordered the pieces, so it's a couple of days later. I got them from e-replacement parts. I got the spare brake pad, and I also mentioned earlier in the reel that in the series, I believe, that we're going to replace the drag washer with a Carbontex drag washer. And the instructions on here say Carbontex drags may be used dry or lightly greased. Cal's Universal reels and drag grease. And we'll go ahead and we'll put that in when we take the spool apart. But let's go over to the business end first. Let's see if we can find that piece. So there's a couple of things going on here. We had disassembled the side plate to this point. Originally we weren't going to touch that. There's a gear that comes in here, right? That's the spin gear. But at this point we are going to take it apart now because we're going to be looking for a broken piece. So we'll take there's a ring out, and this ring actually fits here, and those brakes ride inside the ring. And those brakes, the idea of the brakes is to put tension on it to control the spin rate on that wheel. All right, so we're going to take that and put that in there. I just saw the pin came out of the back of this spool here. This pin came out from here. I know where that pin goes, so we're just going to leave that there and we'll move the spool off to the side. Let's go ahead and remove the main gear then. And again, more than anything else right now, I'm kind of looking for a broken piece. I got some congealed grease, but I don't see the broken piece in here. Kind of okay. All right, so let's clean this while we're at it. Get the old grease off of there. You don't have to remove this the anti-reverse dog here. But more than anything, I just want to make sure that this doesn't have a break point in it. I'm going to clean this off while we're at it. We'll just re-grease this and reset this. This is a single speed lever drag. It only has the one gear. We'll use some blue grease on this. It came with the purple grease, but we'll go ahead and use the Penn Precision Reel Grease here. Put a little bit on that shaft. A little bit on the teeth. and then we can reset it. So you're going to put it in now, and you're going to pull up on the outside tab of this once you get it set, so that you can get it away from these forked teeth, which is where that anti-reverse is going to ride. So let's go do that. You'll set the main gear down as much as you can. You're going to grab the back of it here behind that spring. You're going to pull it up, and now you've got it set properly, and you'll see if you turn the main gear now that you have the anti-reverse. Okay, so that's that. We'll clean that trim ring for the brake. And we didn't find any broken piece or part there, so I guess we'll consider ourselves lucky, but it might be somewhere else in terms of being broken up inside and causing that drag effect. So we'll go over to the spool assembly next. We have to change that gear anyway, so we'll go ahead and go do that. Put that off to the side. Here's the spool assembly. I just knocked that one brake off and put that into our tray. Now when you go to the spool assembly, there's usually an indication on the spool which way is tighten and which way is loosen. Yes, here we can see unlock, and which way is the arrow? The arrow is going this way. So it's non-traditional. The traditional side of this would be counterclockwise. In this case it's clockwise. This has got a fringe side on it. Most of the time a good strong grasp can break that free. If not, you may want to find a channel lock pliers or some plumber's pliers or something where you can grab it side to side and do it. Just be careful. You don't want to tear up the teeth on it if you're using pliers. Let's just try this. Okay, we got it. So most of the time you can just break free like that, and then we can show you what's going on inside here. Alright, we're off here. So this is the cap. Underneath the cap then would be the, there we go. We have the pressure plate for the gear assembly. We have a C-clip here. If we wanted to remove the gear carrier, we could do that. There's no reason to, but we could push this out. You can see the C-clip here and the gap, and you would just simply use a pick or a small screwdriver or something to pull that clear. But there's no reason to remove the gear carrier, and that's holding this together right now. So that's where your spool gear will go. We're just going to set that aside. I'm just going to check this right now, make sure that there's no scarring or anything going on crazy there. And this is just a nicely polished piece of metal that won't cause any problems there. And then we have our bearing. And we have a spring. So it's always good if you're doing this and you want to keep track. The bearing will go in here. The spring will sit on top of it. Take pictures of it. Put that back in my tray. This is the felt washer, the fabric washer that comes with the reel. We're going to replace that with Carbontex. There is some, nothing to worry anybody about. There's a little bit of build-up here. I'm still not finding that little brake pad. I wouldn't expect it in here now. It's a pretty much a solid piece. And we have a bearing below. And then we can get to the internals on this. So let me just put these to the side. We're going to replace that with the Carbontex in a moment. But let's just come over to this side and complete the disassembly of the spool. Now you saw already the rod that's in this this holder here came out. You can take the 4 side plate screws off now. That's holding that assembly in place. And this will give us access to another bearing, a series of springs. And again, you would want to get this schematic on this reel to check the burst diagram for what you're looking for if you're having a problem. But again, this is a servicing now. We don't know where that brake pad went. That's, to me, that's the culprit. It's maybes. I don't live on maybes. Now you should be able just to either put some pressure on this way. There you go. or if you had to, you could, I guess, gently tap it, but that's there. Here's your collar assembly and your axle assembly now. A series of shim washers. You have a brass plate held on by an E-clip. You have 2 shim washers, and then here's your first bearing. I am looking for my fun little bearing puller tool. All that really is just an old pen wrench that's got a hook that was bent onto it, but it's typically, it helps me remove the bearings. Just like that. Just checking the cavity, making sure. So this is the bearing. So we want to make sure that we lubricate the bearing. So we'll go put that back in. That's fine. I'm going to use Real X oil on that one. I oil bearings. Just give that a good drink of oil. And then we can go close this back up. We want to put a little bit of grease on the shaft here to help that keep spinning properly. And then we can just go push that through. And while I push that through, I just knock the bearing out on this side, which is the easy way to do it. I'm going to do the same thing here. I noticed we got the original grease on there. I'm going to take that back on that side. We're going to put that over the rod, and we're going to oil that one again. Use the same Real X oil here. Then we're going to close this side up, and we'll go back to the other side to do the drag washer change. And these small parts, as you know, are always an adventure for me. I'm using a magnetic tipped screwdriver there. I'm not sure it's holding or not. There we go, that's the first one in. That's usually the toughest because you got to center those holes. And 3 more times. So if you're looking for a cup of coffee, go get your cup of coffee. I'll be a moment here. But these are good reels. They're solid. They're, the difference between these and any other lever drag, you usually see on the other lever drags, bigger face area. They're going for bigger fish. But mostly the setups are very similar. Like I mentioned, I don't see anything that's unusual here from a technology standpoint. Seems like every other lever drag reel that's out there on the marketplace, which is a good thing. It's a proven technology. I don't fish lever drag reels much, but the folks that do enjoy them, and they have a lot of success with them. So more power to them. Okay, so that's that. Let's go over and get that new Carbontex drag washer then. And it says you can fish them dry. I don't prefer to. I like to put a little bit of Cal's Universal Grease, which is what was recommended for this, on those. The idea with that is it keeps it flexible. And you don't need to overload these. The best thing to do is just put a little bit on both. This is a bigger washer, so I'll put a little bit on both ends. Do the same thing on the back. Kind of looks like peanut butter. And then I use my gloved hand as a tool to just kind of wipe that in there. Make sure that I get a nice coating across. Any excess grease on there we're going to wipe off, but you just want to make sure you rub it in. Just get it in some of the grooves. And you can do this with the HT100 pen washers as well. Just a light coating of grease is fine. And then there's 4 prongs on here. There's a little bit of oil that came through from oiling that bearing. Let's get that off of there. And then we'll put that in there. And that's your drag update for your reel. That's easy enough. We'll return that one to sender. Okay, then we had the spring. Second bearing, another bearing, so we make sure we put some oil on that. We have the cap, the pressure plate assembly. Then we have the cap. Now remember when we took this cap off, this cap was in a clockwise, so when we go to redo this, we go the other way, counterclockwise, to seal this up. And just turn the axle, make sure it's turning nicely, which it is. We can grab that peg now. It slides there, and that peg belongs in the back here. So let's just go ahead and do a couple of drops of oil and grease on this. I'm going to oil that click mechanism and grab my grease and put a little bit, not much, on the teeth of that plastic gear that drives the worm assembly. Now this is going to fit into a slot there, so kind of eyeball it in terms of getting it lined up with the slot. And then you can turn it. And once you get it in, just give it a turn to make sure that you're in there. And we're not in there yet. Trying to mesh right now. I'm trying to mesh the drive gear here with the main gear. It just takes a little bit of patience. I think we got it that time. Yep, we got it that time. We can see that we're moving that worm gear along there. Okay. So now I got the one brake that came off and the one that we replaced. We're going to go ahead and put those back on. Just looking for a needle nose plier. That tends to make it a little bit easier for me. If you got more dexterity in your hands, you can generally do that yourself. Get the replacement part. Still didn't find it, so I don't know if we just had the residual laying around there or what the case may have been. But regardless, we'll get this back the right way. We'll put it together and we'll see if that's cured the problem there. There you go. I happen to get that one on the right way. Okay, so we rebuilt this side then. We've got the trim ring, which is where those brakes are going to ride. So let's just put this back together now. Oh, before we do that, we have a main gear to install here. A spool gear. And I've just reloaded the bearing behind it. If you can't see, the bearing goes in the slot there. I'm going to wire that bearing up good as well. And then we should only be left with exterior parts. So we're going to go line this up, try and make sure we're very careful about getting those brakes on the right side. Just having a little bit of an alignment issue here at the moment. It's not terrible, it's off just a little bit, so I'm going to go for my little aligning tool. There we go. Alright, so we're going to do one on the bottom there. We got 5 or 6 of these side plate screws. We're going to come up top here. Then I'm going to come over to the other side. I'm not tightening them all down. I want to make sure I get them all set first. And this is the 4th one. Okay, Should be good there. Now I can tighten the rest of the side plate screws down. And before I go much further, I'm just going to spin that spool, make sure that everything seems to work okay. We're good. I'm going to go grab the trim ring. And remember, we had the flat screw and then the two with the collars go on the trim ring. So I'm going to put that flat-faced screw in first, right in the center. And I can grab the two with the collars. They go on the sides. Those are the stops for the lever drag. And one on the other. Oops. Need the collar. Okay, then we have the metal shim that goes on top of here, and we had the glue piece that goes there. Now we're going to go ahead and hook this over, set that on top, and we have our adjuster. And we have our adjuster knob with the spring underneath. And we have the metal cap for the handle. Okay, so next on is the handle then. The handle cap, nut. And then, before I button this down with that last little cover, let's just give it a test here. So we should be in free spool mode now. And we're free spooling nicely. Let's see what happens at the first click. All right, we got some tension there. Now this is the important part. Now this is why the reel failed initially. When you went to full drag, it was difficult to go. Oh, look at that. Perfect, nice and easy turning. So I didn't find that little bumper, the little brake, but somewhere along the line, this must have gotten jammed up in there somewhere and came frayed during the disassembly or whatever, and the cleaning that we did there. But this one's working just, there you go, you're on full drag. All right, very nice. So this one will go back to the happy days fishing there and be capable of landing a lot more fish for a lot of years to come, especially with that Carbontex drag update. So the only last step then is just squaring this up to put that little nut cap protector in there, the little hold fast. Just got to line that flat section up. And in the hole, there we go. Alrighty, so that's it. This is the Shimano Charter Special. It's a lever drag reel. You saw it internally as we talked over the course of this video. The technology is pretty comparable for all of them, but this TR Lever Drag 2000 Charter Special, ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned something from it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I respond to all. And I appreciate you for watching today. Again, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you.